Democracy is the road to socialism. This quote is often attributed to Karl Marx, although its exact origin and phrasing might not be directly from his writings. However, it aligns with certain socialist and Marxist perspectives. Here's an interpretation of its meaning. The quote suggests a view that democracy, understood as a political system where power is vested in the hands of the people, can serve as a transitional or evolutionary path towards socialism. It implies that the principles of democracy, with a focus on popular participation and representation, can pave the way for the establishment and acceptance of socialist ideas and structures. From this perspective, socialism is presented as a logical outcome or destination on the road of democratic governance. The idea is that, as democratic values and institutions become more entrenched, they may naturally progress toward socialist ideals of collective ownership and control over the means of production. This quote may also reflect a critique of capitalism, suggesting that a more democratic society is more likely to question or challenge capitalist structures, leading to a shift towards socialist principles. In summary, the quote encapsulates the idea that democracy, with its emphasis on popular participation and representation, can serve as a pathway or precursor to the development of socialist structures and values. It reflects a perspective that sees a connection between democratic governance and the evolution towards socialist ideals. The first requisite of the happiness of the people is the abolition of religion. This quote is often attributed to Karl Marx, reflecting a viewpoint that ties the happiness of people to the abolition of religion. Here's an interpretation of its meaning. The quote suggests a belief that to achieve the happiness of the people, it is necessary to eliminate or do away with religion. This implies a critical perspective on the role of religion in society. The statement aligns with a secularist perspective, asserting that removing religious influence is a fundamental step toward ensuring the well-being and contentment of individuals. The use of the term requisite implies a belief that religion, in some way, hinders the happiness of people and that its abolition is a necessary condition for their liberation and well-being. This perspective is consistent with Karl Marx's broader critique of religion, viewing it as a social institution that can serve to maintain certain power structures and inhibit social progress. In summary, the quote expresses the idea that eliminating religion is a crucial step toward achieving the happiness of the people, aligning with a critical stance on the role of religion in society and echoing themes from Marxist perspectives on religion. The rich will do anything for the poor, but get off their backs. This quote reflects a critical perspective on the relationship between the wealthy and the less privileged in society. Here's an interpretation. The quote suggests that the wealthy might engage in various charitable or philanthropic actions to help the poor, portraying an image of generosity. However, the phrase, "get off their backs," implies that despite outward acts of charity, the rich are unwilling to address the structural issues that contribute to poverty. It implies a critique of persistent economic inequalities and power imbalances. The quote can be understood as a social critique, highlighting the need for addressing systemic issues and structural changes rather than relying solely on charitable gestures that may not fundamentally alter the power dynamics between the rich and the poor. This perspective aligns with certain Marxist critiques that emphasize the need for addressing the root causes of social inequality rather than relying on superficial acts of charity. The quote conveys a skepticism about the genuine intentions of the wealthy when it comes to addressing poverty. It suggests that true change requires addressing structural issues and power imbalances rather than relying on superficial gestures of charity. The more you love, the more you suffer. This quote implies that deep and profound love may be accompanied by a greater potential for emotional suffering. It suggests that the strength of one's emotional connection can contribute to a heightened vulnerability to pain. The idea here is that investing emotionally in relationships, whether romantic or otherwise, opens one up to the possibility of experiencing emotional hardships such as heartbreak, loss, or disappointment. While love is often associated with joy and fulfillment, the quote emphasizes the duality of love, acknowledging that the same emotional intensity that brings joy can also expose individuals to the risk of suffering. The quote may reflect a realistic perspective on the complexities of human relationships, acknowledging that the emotional highs of love are accompanied by the potential for lows. In summary, the quote encapsulates the idea that there is a correlation between the depth of one's love and the potential for emotional suffering. It acknowledges the inherent risks and vulnerabilities that come with investing deeply in relationships. Revolutions are the locomotives of history. The quote suggests that revolutions are powerful and dynamic forces within the course of history. Like locomotives, they drive and propel historical developments forward. By calling revolutions locomotives, the quote emphasizes their role as agents of transformation, capable of reshaping societal structures, institutions, and power dynamics. It implies that significant social and political progress often occurs through revolutionary events. Revolutions are seen as moments when societies undergo fundamental shifts, challenging existing norms and paving the way for new systems. This perspective aligns with a certain historical determinism, suggesting that the occurrence of revolutions is a necessary and inevitable part of the historical process, driving societies toward new stages of development. In summary, the quote asserts that revolutions are not merely isolated events, but powerful drivers of historical change. It highlights their role as transformative forces that propel societies forward, challenging existing structures and paving the way for new historical developments. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. The phrase, "proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains," suggests that the working class, proletariat, has little to lose by overthrowing existing social and economic structures. Chains metaphorically represents the oppressive conditions and constraints imposed on the working class. This quote is a call to action, encouraging the working class to recognize their potential for liberation. It implies that breaking free from societal constraints, symbolized by chains, is a risk worth taking for the improvement of their conditions. They have a world to win presents a positive vision of the future. It suggests that by challenging and transforming the existing order, the working class has the opportunity to create a new and better world, free from the chains of exploitation and oppression. The quote is imbued with a revolutionary tone, emphasizing the transformative potential of the working class rising against the bourgeoisie. It encapsulates the revolutionary spirit of the Communist Manifesto, where Marx and Engels argue for the overthrow of the capitalist system. In summary, the quote motivates the working class to recognize their power, envision a better future, and take action to liberate themselves from the chains of exploitation and oppression. It encapsulates the revolutionary spirit of Marxist thought. Reason has always existed, but not always in a reasonable form. This quote suggests that while reason as a concept has always existed, its manifestation or expression in human thought and society has not always been rational or logical. The quote acknowledges the enduring nature of reason, implying that the capacity for logical thinking and rationality has been a constant in human existence. The phrase, "not always in a reasonable form," suggests that throughout history, The way reason is applied or expressed has varied. In different periods and contexts, reason may have been clouded by bias, superstition, or irrational beliefs. The quote implies a historical evolution of reason, indicating that societies and individuals have progressed in their ability to apply reason in more reasonable and logical ways over time. It encourages critical reflection on the historical manifestations of reason, prompting an examination of how rationality has been shaped by cultural, social, and intellectual factors. In summary, the quote emphasizes the enduring presence of reason throughout human history, but highlights that the quality and expression of reason have evolved and varied. It encourages an awareness of how rationality has been shaped by historical and cultural contexts. The oppressed should rebel, and they will continue to rebel and raise disturbance until their civil rights are fully restored to them and all partial distinctions, exclusions, and incapacitations are removed. This quote expresses the idea that when a group of people is oppressed, they have a natural inclination to rebel against the oppressive conditions. The rebellion is expected to persist until their full civil rights are restored, and all forms of discrimination, exclusions, and limitations are eliminated. The quote is a call for the oppressed to actively resist their oppressive conditions. It suggests that rebellion is not only justified, but also necessary in the face of injustice. The phrase, "they will continue to rebel," indicates an expectation that resistance and rebellion will persist as long as the oppressive conditions endure. It suggests a belief in the persistence of the human spirit to resist subjugation. The ultimate goal of the rebellion is defined as the full restoration of civil rights. This includes the removal of all forms of discrimination, exclusions, and limitations that hinder the oppressed group from enjoying equal rights and opportunities. The quote implies that the rebellion is not just about addressing specific grievances, but about tackling the broader systemic issues that contribute to the oppression of the group. In summary, the quote advocates for the oppressed to rebel against their oppressors, predicting that this resistance will persist until the full restoration of civil rights is achieved, along with the elimination of all forms of discrimination and exclusion. It reflects a commitment to addressing systemic inequalities and securing equal rights for the oppressed. The human being is, in the most literal sense, a political animal, not merely a gregarious animal, but an animal which can individuate itself only in the midst of society. This quote emphasizes the deeply social and political nature of human beings. The phrase political animal suggests that humans are inherently inclined toward social and political life. Unlike other animals that may simply live in groups, humans are uniquely political in the sense of organizing and governing themselves. While humans share a social aspect with other animals, the quote distinguishes humans from merely being gregarious, living in groups, by emphasizing the political dimension. It implies active participation in societal structures, governance, and decision-making. The quote contends that the process of individuation or self-development for humans occurs within the context of society. Unlike some solitary animals, humans define themselves, discover their identities, and realize their potential in the complex interactions of social and political life. It emphasizes the idea that human individuality is intimately tied to societal structures, suggesting that humans find their true selves and fulfill their potential through engagement with others in a political community. In summary, the quote underscores the uniquely political nature of human beings, asserting that our individuality and self-realization are intricately linked to our participation in society and political life. It invites reflection on the idea that humans, as political animals, find their true selves through collective engagement and governance. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed correlation of parents and child, becomes all the more disgusting. This quote is from Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto. Let's break down its meaning. The term bourgeois refers to the middle or capitalist class. Marx criticizes what he calls claptrap or insincere, hypocritical talk, specifically addressing the bourgeois discourse on family and education. Marx finds the bourgeois discourse on the family and education hypocritical and distasteful. He suggests that the values and ideals propagated by the bourgeoisie about familial relationships and education are not genuine but are used to maintain their social and economic dominance. The phrase, hallowed correlation of parents and child, likely refers to the sacred or revered idea of the family structure, emphasizing the connection between parents and children. Marx finds this portrayal by the bourgeoisie particularly repulsive. The phrase becomes all the more disgusting implies that Marx's disgust intensifies when considering how the bourgeoisie presents their views on family and education. This might be because he sees it as a tool to perpetuate social inequality and class distinctions. In summary, Marx criticizes the bourgeois rhetoric regarding the family and education, condemning it as insincere and hypocritical. He suggests that the bourgeoisie uses these concepts to maintain their social standing and economic power, finding such discourse particularly repugnant. Capital is reckless of the health or length of life of the laborer unless under compulsion from society. This quote highlights a perspective on the relationship between capital, referring to the capitalist system, and the well-being of laborers. The quote suggests that, by itself, the system of capital, capitalism, does not inherently prioritize the health or longevity of the laborer. Capital, in this context, refers to the economic and social relations associated with the ownership of the means of production. It emphasizes the potential disregard or indifference of the capitalist system toward the health and lifespan of the laborer. In a profit-driven system, the primary concern may be the extraction of labor for economic gain. The phrase, unless under compulsion from society, implies that societal forces or interventions are necessary to compel capital to consider the health and well-being of laborers. This could refer to labor laws, regulations, or social movements advocating for workers' rights. The quote aligns with Marx's broader critique of capitalism, suggesting that the system, left to its own devices, may prioritize profit over the welfare of workers. It underscores the importance of societal structures and regulations to ensure fair and humane treatment of laborers. In summary, the quote reflects a critical perspective on capitalism, asserting that the system may not inherently prioritize the health and longevity of laborers unless compelled to do so by societal forces and interventions. Revolutions are not made by men in spectacles. This quote suggests that revolutions are not initiated or driven by individuals who are merely observers or passive participants. Here's an interpretation of its meaning. The quote implies that meaningful revolutions require active engagement and participation. Men in spectacles could be a metaphor for passive onlookers or individuals who are merely observing events without actively contributing to change. The term spectacles could symbolize a detached observational stance, perhaps referring to those who are more interested in analyzing or commenting on events rather than actively participating in them. The quote emphasizes the importance of action and direct involvement in the revolutionary process. It suggests that individuals who are actively engaged, rather than being mere spectators, are the ones who can bring about significant societal changes. There might be an undertone of criticism toward intellectual or academic observers who may analyze events from a distance but do not actively participate in the revolutionary process. In summary, the quote conveys the idea that revolutions require active participation and engagement. It implies that meaningful social change is brought about by individuals who are actively involved in the transformative process, rather than by those who passively observe or analyze events. The writer may very well serve a movement of history as its mouthpiece, but he cannot, of course, create it. This quote suggests a distinction between the role of a writer and the capacity to independently generate historical movements. The quote acknowledges that a writer can play a significant role in representing or articulating the ideas and sentiments of a historical movement. The writer serves as a mouthpiece for the movement, expressing its goals, values, and perspectives. However, the quote emphasizes a limitation. The writer cannot independently create a historical movement. While they can contribute to shaping its narrative and influencing public opinion, the actual emergence of a movement involves broader social, economic, and political factors beyond the writer's control. The quote recognizes the writer's ability to interpret and communicate the ethos of a movement, amplifying its impact and facilitating its understanding by a wider audience. It implies an acknowledgement that historical movements are complex and multifaceted, often arising from broader societal forces and conditions. The writer's role is portrayed as responsive to and in service of these larger historical dynamics. In summary, the quote highlights the writer's role as a communicator and interpreter of historical movements, but underscores the inability of the writer to single-handedly create such movements. The emergence of historical forces involves a complex interplay of societal factors beyond the writer's individual creativity. The press should be not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, but also a collective organizer of the masses. This quote expresses the idea that the press or media should serve not only as a means of spreading information and ideas, propagandist, and stirring public sentiments, agitator, but also as an organizer of the masses. The term collective propagandist suggests that the press should work collectively to disseminate information and promote certain ideas. This could involve shaping public opinion and influencing attitudes on various issues. The press is also encouraged to function as a collective agitator, stirring up public sentiments and emotions. This might involve mobilizing people to take action on specific social or political issues. The quote goes further by emphasizing the press's role as a collective organizer of the masses. This implies a proactive role in mobilizing and organizing the public to participate in social or political movements. The overall message is that the press should not merely report events, but should actively engage in shaping public opinion, inspiring action, and organizing collective efforts for societal change. In summary, the quote underscores the idea that the press has a responsibility not only to inform and agitate, but also to play a role in organizing collective action. It reflects a perspective that sees the press as an influential force in shaping and mobilizing public opinion and activism for societal change. The bureaucracy is a circle from which no one can escape. Its hierarchy is a hierarchy of knowledge. The top entrusts the understanding of detail to the lower ranks, whilst the lower ranks credit the top with understanding of the general, and so all are mutually deceived. This quote delves into the dynamics of bureaucratic systems, emphasizing the hierarchical structure and the circulation of knowledge within such systems. Here's an interpretation of its meaning. The quote begins by characterizing the bureaucracy as a circle from which no one can escape. This suggests a closed and self-perpetuating system where individuals are caught within the confines of the bureaucratic structure. The phrase, Hierarchy of knowledge implies that the hierarchy within the bureaucracy is not solely based on authority, but is also structured around the distribution of knowledge. Those at the top are presumed to possess a broader understanding of the general aspects of the organization, while those at lower levels are entrusted with specific details. The quote introduces an element of deception, suggesting that this arrangement leads to mutual deception. Those at the top believe the lower ranks understand the details, while those at the lower ranks assume the top comprehends the general aspects. In reality, this mutual trust might result in a lack of true understanding at any level. The quote can be seen as a critical reflection on the bureaucratic structure, highlighting how the distribution and perception of knowledge within the system can contribute to a cycle of deception and a lack of genuine understanding. In summary, the quote paints a picture of a bureaucratic system that operates in a closed, circular manner, with a hierarchy of knowledge contributing to a mutual deception among different levels within the system. It suggests a need for critical reflection on the dynamics of bureaucratic organizations. Karl Marx was born on May 5, 1818, in Trier, in the western part of what is now Germany. He passed away on March 14, 1883, in London, United Kingdom. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, economist, sociologist, and political theorist who became one of the most influential figures in the development of socialist and communist thought. He studied law, history, and philosophy at various universities, and in the mid-19th century collaborated with Friedrich Engels to produce some of the most influential works in the history of political theory. Marx's most notable works include The Communist Manifesto, 1848, and Das Kapital, Capital, published in volumes between 1867 and 1894. In these writings, Marx critiqued capitalism, arguing that it inevitably led to the exploitation of the working class, proletariat, by the bourgeoisie, capitalist class. He envisioned a historical process that would lead to the eventual overthrow of capitalism and the establishment of a classless communist society. While Marx's ideas had a profound impact on political and economic thought, they also influenced political movements, giving rise to socialist and communist movements worldwide. However, during his lifetime, Marx faced political and intellectual challenges, and he did not witness the widespread adoption of his ideas. After Marx's death, his ideas continued to evolve and influence various political movements, including the development of Marxist-Leninist ideologies in the 20th century. Despite the controversies and adaptations of his theories, Karl Marx remains a central figure in the history of social and political thought, with a lasting impact on discussions about capitalism, class struggle, and the nature of societal change.